All right, we're live.
All right, we are back in session.
Okay, we have one more item under this general city topics that we wanted to pursue. B&O tax heavy manufacturing.
Yes. This was me. This was so a year ago, I think it was, one of the things I asked that was talked about was phasing out the non-conforming use there, and Brian had given us a memo on it. And then also I know that there was a memo that was forwarded from the attorney for one of the properties on the proposed termination of the heavy manufacturing uses. And I have a copy of that one too that was sent out. But my whole point of this was, as a community, we decided we didn't see this as a long-term vision or a plan. And they have as much of an adverse impact on our community than anything else that happens in the community, whether it's the odors, whether it's the roads. We have to clean our roads, sweep our roads, the aesthetics, and we don't get the benefit of the sales tax. So when they're busiest right now, when the economy is booming, their impacts on our community are the greatest, and we have zero financial benefit from that. I mean, granted, there are a few employees that work there, I understand and appreciate that, but I was interested in increasing the B&O tax. So the only way we can increase it higher than what it is now is to go to the voters. And I considered this to have two benefits. Actually three benefits. One, we get a little extra money to help offset the money that we put into because of the industry going on. Two, it raises awareness of the issue in the community, that we recognize this isn't in our long-term plan. And three, it brings awareness to the owners of the properties that this is something we still continue to see, and we don't see it as a long-term part of our vision for our community. So I just wanted to know if there's any interest at all in considering and exploring getting more information on what it would take to go to the voters to increase the B&O tax. Because we are at the maximum level that we can levy without going to the voters. And so,
mind if I walk through this memo?
Absolutely.
Through this memo really quick. So John put this together just the last day or so, and reflecting somewhere between 17 and 24,000 a year. We're one of 40 cities in the state that have a B&O tax. And then this table on the back, it shows you what cities levy a B&O tax by what category. And if you look on the table, deep into the table, you'll see little E's and little B's. So the little B's, like go to Seattle, see the little B's, those are voter approved. The E's, the reason those are higher than the amount allowed by state law is because they're exempt, meaning that they had these in place before the law changed, I guess. So, yeah, you can see the comparative rates. You can see the manufacturing rate of the different cities.
So can I just add a couple more things to my opening comments on it? So first of all, on this, we can't talk about specific sites, and this isn't about specific sites. This is about a non-conforming use that exists in our city. So that's one of the things. And one of the other things that I think is important is that when you look at a lot of the other cities in here, you know, a lot of them do have a significant, manufacturing is a significant component of their economy. And it isn't for us, it doesn't benefit us. So that's,
Bill?
In general, I would support something like this. My thought though is you have to be very careful how you word it. If you say B&O tax right there, every business owner says, no, we don't want that. So you can't say B&O tax. You have to say heavy manufacturing B&O tax or something to identify how specific this is. So don't use the word B&O tax by itself. You'll scare a bunch of.
I agree with that completely.
Yeah.
And as a business owner, I don't like paying B&O tax, and I think it's a regressive, ridiculous tax.
Yeah, and so to let the owners know in the city, we don't have a B&O tax in general. We support our businesses, but there's reasons that we are asking for a raise in this one. You're right. Those big heavy trucks, it doesn't matter what the heavy industry is, whether it's hauling plywood around or hauling cement around, it's big heavy trucks wearing out our roads without us really getting any benefit or minimal benefit from the sales of that product.
So just for clarification, because I thought I heard something different in the run-up, you can pass a B&O tax that focuses just on one sector?
We already have one.
Okay.
And it's at the statutory limit for non-voter approval,
But just for one sector?
just for a heavy manufacturer.
I think the other thing benefit it would do is if it passed with a really high rate, it would definitely
Yes.
tell those people, oh, there's support in Kenmore for, you know, dealing with heavy manufacturing.
Great point.
Okay, Stacy?
I'm a little bit opposite. I'm actually not that interested in going to the voters for this. And for a bunch of reasons, but mainly, I think I want things that we go to the voters for to be, I don't want to be going to the voters all the time for a whole bunch of stuff, I guess, is have like voter fatigue on things. And I like the idea of going to the voters for big things like walkways and waterways, or maybe getting around Lake Point. Working on the walkways and waterways campaign, going to the voters is a lot of work. And that's gonna be a lot of staff time, and it's a lot of work. So, I don't know, I'm not that excited about doing this.
Okay, David?
So, question I have is how much money do you hope to raise by instituting this increased voter-approved B&O tax? Considering taking something to ballot is gonna cost us 30 to 40,000, 35, 45,000.
You can see the numbers based on that memo. So this last year, I think it was 25,000 was the amount. So if it was increased, obviously that's gonna be over and above 25,000. So maybe you spend a year's worth of the B&O tax to run it.
So your return on investment.
And I'd be the first
a
to
year.
admit, I don't know enough about the numbers, about what it costs to go. I don't know what it cost, what the, what it takes to run a ballot measure like that. But to Stacy's point, I understand, I know actually I'm out of turn. I understand what you're saying about voter fatigue, and I thought about that. Unfortunately, the only way we can address this is to go to the voters, because the state law doesn't allow us to change it without going to the voters. So that was, just so you know, that was the reason that.
And where I am more than happy to increase tax on heavy industry. And I'm just looking at the cost to take something to ballot. It just to pay to put it on the ballot is gonna be pretty expensive.
Do we know what that cost is?
Yeah, about 45,000.
Deborah, Nigel, and Joe.
No,
I'm not super jazzed about this, because even at like the high rates, I'm just looking at, what's kind of even the lower one in Seattle. Even if we doubled this, get an extra 25,000 a year, I mean, to me, it's symbolic, but it's not much money. And so I guess I'm kind of more thinking of, gosh, is this, where we want to put our eggs in a basket to go to the voters for 25,000? I don't know. I have a hard time justifying that. And also, the other piece is, if we want to play ball with some of these same business, folks, is a little bit of a poke in the eye. So, that's my other feeling about it.
Okay. Nigel, and then
I'm not sure really what I think about this. I think, I was fully supportive of the B&O tax that we run heavy industry and a lot of the other kind of regulations we put on heavy industrial uses in the city. But calling the voters it's tough. It's tough, it's expensive, and I kind of worry politically what that might end up looking like. Just from like what the messaging from the, what the Puget Sound Business Journal then says about Kenmore, or what, other business groups may end up, a lot of folks here spend a lot of time trying to make Kenmore as friendly as possible for business, and this could undo a lot of that messaging pretty quickly. I don't know, and a ballot measure like this could turn into something fairly contentious, and I just don't know if the outcome is going to be worth all of that. I agree with you. We need to do more to address heavy industry, but the ballot is a really high. That's a high hurdle to get me to right now, because I just don't think that the outcome might not be worth the effort to get there. So,
Stacy?
And one other thing, if you go to the voters, you're gonna have a really good story about numbers. So like, do we have X amount of dollars of work that's directly related to these businesses that's not getting funded? If we don't have that good story, then that might be hard to sell as well.
So I agree, that's part of the preparation, and, but just if you were to look at just even the odor control alone, the effort and the time and the energy, the legal advice that we've spent on that. And one of the things that it's been consistent theme for me over, the last few years on the council is trying to address how we get this to start moving to the next stage. Because what I see property owners that are highly motivated to work with us and have even fought us at different levels, even from this letter from their attorney about, apparently I'm assuming I was the only one that maybe thought we could try to amortize the non-conforming use out. And this is all part of getting it's all part of the greater waterfront story about how we get this to the next level. And if we continue just to wait and do nothing, I feel like we're just going to continue to wait and do nothing. And so I'm trying to get us proactively to get us there. And I'm running out of options to look at. And so this is like the next one that I look at. And so that's, I'm open to other options. I just don't know what they are.
Okay, Milton and then Joe.
I think it's just important to remember that the concrete plant and the asphalt plant are not part of Lake Point. So if you're working with the Lake Point owner to try to negotiate something and work together, that's different, because they're different properties.
But the Lake Point owner is expanding what had been a terminated use of heavy industry on that site. And so this, again, starts to at least address that. I don't want to talk about specific properties, but I don't see it going away. And I think we have to continue to use the tools that we have available to make change that we plan for and our citizens clearly want.
Joe and then Rob.
I'd support a public participation phase to see what the public does think about this. I feel like I'm generally inclined in favor of an increase or bringing it to the public to vote on the increase for a B&O tax because of all the effort, as Brent says, that's been put into everything on the range of issues that we have to deal with, from odors and all the rest of it. So I'd be in favor of seeing if the public is interested enough in the city or gearing up towards such a ballot measure.
Rob?
Well, one piece of context is we had talked about doing an amortization ordinance over 20 years. And when the industry heard about that possibility, they actually came to me and Nancy and said, well, actually, the main gravel pit down in DuPont that we get our materials from, it's probably gonna expire as a gravel pit, probably fully mined out in 25 years. So rather than doing an ordinance that forces us to be gone in 20 years, what if we do a voluntary agreement that has us out in 25 years? And so we've asked Rod Cascuma and I think Rosemary to take a look at that, putting together such an agreement.
Okay.
So that would address part of the area.
Okay,
And definitely we want to hear more about that.
okay, interesting. Other? No?
I do have one concern that in general, to pass ballot measures takes a lot of staff time. It's a lot of work to gather the data, to produce the brochures, to get enough public information out there to actually have people understand what the issue is. It's a lot of work. So that would be one of my concerns, is if we've already loaded a lot of work onto the staff, is it really a worthwhile way to spend their time?
Well, and if you go to the voters, they might not vote for it.
So that's,
And then what's your message?
so no, but you know
know?
what? My message is I learned something.
Oh, okay.
And
Well,
as a
yeah.
council, we all learned something there. If that is, I absolutely agree. That's gets to what Milton was saying earlier about if it's overwhelmingly supportive. Just conversely, if it fails, that's what, it would be like walkways and waterways in a way.
Okay.
It's like if that didn't pass, okay, that tells us something. That's actually useful information.
But that's assuming that, like, you know, one of the big concerns there doesn't throw $50,000 at it and run a gigantic campaign, which then you're not learning anything from the vote, other than who had the most money for.
If that's the way you want to view it, I mean, I don't view it that way. I would be willing to put the facts on the table and let the voters make the decision. But yeah, clearly they have more capital to
Right, I'm
bank
just
this
saying,
than we
I'm
do.
just saying, I'm not sure what you can really, you know, if somebody comes in and drops a ton of money on a disinformation, on a campaign, I don't know if you can really read that as much as anything.
Yeah, well,
I'd be willing to, you know, go as far as, you know, like a preliminary public process. And I bet we could kind of glean from what we hear in a miniature public process of, you know, whether, you know, what's the tenor of the community around this? And that might give us some preliminary information about whether to go forward. I don't know.
So you've had no public process, you don't?
Not
know?
around this.
Okay.
I feel like we've had enough public process around just the issue in general, that we know that the citizens don't want this. So I don't feel like,
Yeah, I would agree
I
with
don't think that we need to go down a whole nother public process.
Just don't want the tax.
No, don't
Well, I'm
want,
talking about the tax.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like we know the answer to that already. I mean,
I don't know
it's not
how
a
we
tax,
know.
the citizens aren't paying tax, so.
I understand. So we have not asked this, I understand that, but they would have to vote on this.
Okay, other conversations? So is there to do out of this? What I'm hearing is a couple of folks supportive of process, perhaps, that would lead to this. So two others lukewarm, that's what I'm hearing.
And I guess I could comment that as we set our priorities for the rest of the afternoon, it does eventually come back to how much time the staff has. And if it's not a high priority item, maybe we shouldn't spend too much time.
Right.
So it may be part of our priority discussion.
so I have a question on this, and honestly, this really would help me, because then I don't have to continue to bring this up every year, trying to come up with another angle. is everybody fine with just letting this organically happen the way it'll happen, whether it's 5 years or 35 years?
I mean, I want to get creative about it. I'm just not sure if this is the particular way to get creative about it.
So if we want to be creative, then how do we want to do that?
I don't know the answer to that.
Bill?
So I personally am okay to wait and let the market take care of it, because I really believe if Lake Point develops, the concrete plant, the asphalt plant will eventually go in. Their
Yep.
plants will get so
Yep.
old, they will not be able to produce a profit with the old equipment, and we have enough rules on it that they can't expand or.
The land value will go up so much. It makes
Yeah.
sense.
So I really
Exactly.
think, I think those two will take care of themselves.
So that is a very likely a decades-long process.
That's what Lake Point.
No, that's what I'm saying. So there's two issues associated with that. One is and as one of the things we learned is that they can continue to replace components of that plant without being out of compliance in their non-conformance. So we have to accept then that, and I'll just take one aspect of what this tax would cover. That plant then, for instance, could go indefinitely. Because if it's profitable and if other things are closing around in the peripheral geographic area, well, clearly that plant will become more and more important in their stable of options of where you get cement and asphalt. And then on the other side, which is we're not zeroing in on the illegal activity going on at the Lake Point site and that expansion of non-conforming uses. And so these are things that if we don't address them proactively, they're going to continue to do probably for a long time. And especially as Dean says, apparently that, if the cash flow is adequate, and he's only got to pay taxes on $6.5 million, well, you don't need a heck of a lot of cash flow from a heavy industrial use and leases to be able to pay your taxes. Well, he's got time on his hand. And so I'm trying to pull all the dots together, and I just feel like if we're going to do nothing, then we have to accept that probably nothing will happen for quite a long time.
Nigel and Stacy.
I mean, if something, I'm not going to use the word illegal, but if something is happening at the Lake Point site, then yeah, we should be on top of that. And our code enforcement people should be on top of that every day. I mean, but I've heard arguments that there might be something happening there, but I'd like to, actually, I have more data that something's happening there. Our code enforcement people should be on top of that if something's happening, regardless of the rest of this conversation. If they're expanding non-conforming use, then by all means, we should be on top of that and doing all of that.
Stacy and then
Yeah, if our idea is to get the non-conforming uses out of there, I don't think that this is gonna do that. I think that whatever we go to the voters for is gonna be such a small amount of money to them that they would just end up paying it.
Well, from what I understand, there's not a statutory limit on what you can ask for. And I know the memo says it's not clear, but when I did my research, it isn't clear at all. And so somebody said doubling the rate. Well, I don't see in there that we can't significantly increase the rate, and we can make a very reasonable justification for doing that based on the costs that are incurred.
So can you set the rate as an amount or as a percentage?
It's a percentage of their gross sales.
What I was gonna say. Again, I'm just here to provide context. I'm not trying to steer the conversation in any certain way, but another fun fact I just recently learned, and I don't know why I just learned this, it was news to Brian too. And that is when Gary Sargent sold off the Cal Portland piece back in 2008, he put in a couple of conditions to benefit himself. One is he gets right of first refusal, and we've all known that.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing that I didn't know is that he also made an arrangement that Gary Sargent is, or subsequent property owner, is involved in developing Lake Point, and Lake Point gets all the concrete at cost. So the Lake Point developer wants Cal Portland to stick around for Lake Point development.
Now, I'll let money then should go to the city side because we're allowing them to stay.
We would get the receipt tax on that, though, if we're the receiving city.
Oh, sales tax on it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would.
Sales tax after discounted at the box.
Yeah.
Wow.
Even that, we just.
Cheapest concrete you'll ever see.
Which in some ways is obviously an incentive on one of the other things you want to have, right? So, oh, interesting.
Quarter-mile transportation costs.
Right, throw it over the fence, right? Okay, anything else on this one? I think what I heard there is, yes, there's interest in having that not be in your city and pursuing, but this is not particularly a favorite way to do it. The only thing else I heard is that, I thought I heard, we don't either know or there are no other mechanisms by which we could encourage them to leave. And so I just wanted to check and see, is that what I heard? If so, is that true?
I mean, weren't we, I mean, years ago, we were looking at hours of operations, we were looking at noise, and some of that got tabled or set aside. And I can't remember what it was. I want to say like hours of operations got set aside, maybe.
Oh, yeah, now I have to really go back.
Yeah, no, I don't mean you to, I was expecting to know this off the top of your head, but I'd like to look at, I mean, it's been 3 years probably. I'd like to take a look at that stuff again. If there's stuff in those original recommendations that we haven't done, maybe it's time to revisit them. To at least try to tamp down some of the externalities from the heavy industrial use in the city.
Okay.
Deborah?
We alluded to this earlier, I do have a concern if, I can't believe I'm saying this, I obviously want the outcome that you're wanting as well, and we've heard that from residents, but I am concerned about the chilling message that some of these more blatant things, like a very high tax on a particular kind of, manufacturing would send to the business community. I don't know. I mean, at the same time, we're trying to have economic development. I don't know. I mean, we're having enough trouble getting a development that we like at a neighboring site in that area that I'm not sure. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about really being strong, being perceived as strong arming in this way.
Anything else on this?
Based on 0.2%, and in 2018, we received 24,000. That means they did over $12.5 million worth of business out of there, of which we got 24,000 plus some employees that maybe bought Kid Valley burgers. And relative to the impact on the city, I think it's highly disproportionate, the impact they have on our city. And at the area that is the most prized location in the entire city. So it's at which it's a non-conforming use that we decided 20 years ago we wanted to see it. I want to see us use every tool we can to bring it along.
Okay, anything else? Okay. What I do hear coming out of this is staff will revisit some of the elements of past conversations or processes to see if there were things that could have been done then, or other tools that we can address it. So, and then I also heard that you are in conversation with at least a 25-year in the life conversation about this. So. Okay. All right. It's goal time. We're a little bit ahead. So you guys need to get up and take a quick break before we go into the process. restroom or something like that? Let's do it. Let's take 5 minutes and, it's after lunch, so.